Okay, good afternoon, members. We are going to take up the remaining bills for bill introduction on our board, and we have a number of our colleagues here this afternoon. And the first one up is Representative Pigley. So welcome to House Human Services.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me in.
Thank you. Members, you will find these bills posted on our committee's website. Links to them. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. So Representative Mark Pigley from the Orleans-Lamoille District. This bill has actually been around for a number of years. I kind of took it over from some folks to try to have it addressed at some point. I think it's more important than ever. Looking at the statement of purpose for the bill, the bill proposes to require the Department of Health to submit an annual report to the General Assembly regarding adverse reactions reports to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. And then you'll notice that you're talking about Section 1, 18 VSA 1132, which is already in statute, talking about how in consultation with the patients, or if a minor, the patient's parents or guardian, all significant adverse events that occur after vaccination of adults, even if the practitioner is unsure whether a vaccine caused the adverse event. I think it's interesting, and I wonder if maybe even that shouldn't be changed. And when it's talking about reporting, because in the report itself, through the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, anybody can report an adverse event. So healthcare providers, vaccine manufacturers, and the general public. So that's something that was interesting that I found. And then basically it goes on to talk about how on or before January 15th, the Department of Health should submit a report to the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare and to the House Committees on Healthcare and Human Services regarding any adverse reactions reported by the healthcare practitioners in Vermont to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. And then they start to talk about, all the things that they'd like to see included in that. And I looked at, maybe some of these things, and again, that would be having folks in from the health department to consider the total number and cost of emergency department visits related to reporting adverse reactions. I mean, I don't know how difficult something like that would be, but again, that's something that, you could certainly find out from these folks. Another interesting thing that I found out, and you may all be aware of this, but on E, when it talks about a summary of activities undertaken by the department to support Vermonters filing for compensation pursuant to the National Child Vaccine Injury Act. Years back, I looked up what that's all about, and in 1986, it went into effect. Its inception was in 1988, but since that, over 9,500 have been paid in excess of $4.5 billion. And it's what it is. It's a process for folks to receive compensation for injuries or deaths resulting from certain vaccines, aiming to stabilize the vaccine market and ensure access to vaccines. And my understanding is that has actually done that. In other words, rather than, so many large class action suits against, these manufacturers, it's done its job. And if you are awarded this, it provides compensation for medical expenses, lost earnings, pain and suffering related to those vaccine injuries. And again, so the last section 2, not section 2, but number 2 under this, the department shall post the report submitted pursuant to this subsection on its website and shall provide electronic copies to healthcare providers administrating immunizations in Vermont. And I kind of circled this year, just our drug pharmacies considered healthcare providers.
Are you asking a question?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. Healthcare providers is defined in statute. I don't, pharmacists might be considered I'm not sure pharmacies are, but we could obviously seek clarification of that.
Right, because again, when it talks about, providing this on its website or they'll provide an electronic copy, and it says healthcare providers, and I just wonder if that was pharmacists, how would that transpire? But
Yeah, it's, actually, Jen Carby could probably tell us whether pharmacists are included or not. Yeah.
but that's basically the gist of it. I don't have a lot of other information. I'm not that knowledgeable in this realm, but I just know that for this body to have an understanding, it's not something that needs to be generated. It's out there, but the health department could get it back to you folks for consideration to look at once a year and maybe make some decisions based on that.
Thank you, Representative Higley. So I actually see, which I didn't know, that there is actually already a vaccine adverse event reporting system in the state. So I didn't know that. And so this is seeking to have a report submitted to the General Assembly, and then list out a bunch of the things, which I'm sure at this point in time, the health department, just having received a major blow exactly on immunology, they probably would say that this would be difficult for them to achieve, to be honest.
Well, again, if you want to talk about that, though, that's $7 million that you're talking about, right? For tracking infectious diseases, improve access to vaccines, and address health disparities. That was due to end in September of this year anyway.
2025. Yeah, we're aware of that.
That's something that, a lot of these agencies have to have an understanding that a lot of these things are going to come down the pike, and we're seeing it as well in our committee. And, I can't expect that the state of Vermont is going to pick up every single one of these federal decreases in help for whatever reason.
Agreed. No, agreed with that. And then I also wasn't aware of this bill, that federal bill that was passed in 1986. So that's helpful, very helpful information.
Yeah.
Do members have any questions for Representative Higley?
I would just, I don't know if anybody can speak to it. I would want to know just historically, or why what was the background for setting up the reporting system? And if the reporting system was set up, who was originally set to monitor it and for what purposes?
If we were to take up the bill, those would be questions that we would ask the health department.
Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, you can go to their website as well,
Yes,
and they
I'm
have a
trying
lot of
to
that
see if I can
information on
remember.
there as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Was there a question on this side of the table? No? Okay. Thank you, Representative Higley.
Thank you very much.
Have a
Appreciate
nice
it.
weekend.
All right, you too. Patience.
Representative Page,
Different.
welcome to House Human Services.
Thank you, Chair.
Appreciate it.
I think I know most.
I was going to say, I think so. We appreciate you being here, and the floor is yours to talk about H104.
And if you don't know me, I'm Woodland Page from Newport, and I'm here to discuss H104. And I think it's a simple bill, but it may not be, depending on committee questions. The general purpose of the bill is to exclude veterans' disability benefits from an applicant's income for the purpose of making eligibility determinations for public assistance programs or benefits to the extent that they're already excluded. And the bill is made up of primarily 4 different sections, and each one has been amended to basically include these comments for their 30 VSA subsection 209. And that is for the Electricity and Natural Gas Efficiency Commission entity. Section 2 is 33 VSA subsection 125, and that's for Department for Children and Families. Section 3 is 33 VSA subsection 405, Department of Vermont Health Access. And finally, section 433 VSA subsection 506, and that's for Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living. And each of those sections has been amended with these words: any state program or benefit administered or operated by the department shall exclude a veteran's disability benefit from the calculation of the individual's taxable income as defined by the VS, whatever the VSA is, or the individual's adjusted gross income as defined by 26 U.S. Code Section 62, respectively, for the purpose determining eligibility. Veterans that may be disabled do receive disability benefits from the Veterans Administration. Those monies are normally non-taxable on the federal as well as our state here. And it's unclear whether those disability benefits are included in income eligibility for certain benefits that I mentioned. And the way the bill is written, it takes into account of that. And that's basically the extent of this bill.
Thank you, Representative Page. I understand all of the bill except for the first part about energy efficiency. I don't really understand that part.
And I'd have to defer to our legislative council as well.
Okay.
I don't know what entity that they're talking about. It could be Efficiency Vermont.
Everything's sufficient.
And I suspect that's what it's.
Okay, an order of appointment. I have no idea what an order of appointment is. Okay. All right. Well, if we take up the bill, then we will definitely have to look that one up.
Yes, and I apologize for not.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Knowing it, but that's what I figured it was for.
Okay. Representative Donahue?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was a reason you didn't include excluding disability income from household income for property tax purposes.
I think in many cases that is done based upon the municipality, and I think, not certain.
That would be a question that we should ask,
I'm
because
sure you.
But I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking of that.
Okay.
But I do know that some municipalities do give some sort of.
They choose to give a certain exemption.
Yes.
Yes, that's a municipal exemption. That's separate from what the state household income calculation is. Which,
okay.
You may have to be 100% disabled in order to get that.
there are a lot of, and it becomes only if you happen to be in a municipality that gives a deduction.
Yeah,
Right. So if we were looking at the exclusion of disability benefits for veterans, we would probably want to be inclusive of any place, honestly, that income is
Right,
used.
make it
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was only looking at, benefits such as.
disability related benefits
Yeah.
that they might have access to based on income. Yeah. I get the concept for sure. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Representative.
Question, either for you, Representative Page, or perhaps the chair or someone else here on the committee. As I imagine, some of these programs are funded through federal dollars funneling down to the state. Would there be any restrictions by the federal government as to how income is calculated that we may run afoul of if we made these changes?
I would not.
There would probably be some. I can think of, for Medicaid, for instance, that is primarily up to the state in terms of determining eligibility, but there may be, like, I'm not sure, like in some of the fuel assistance money, some of those come, they're partially federally funded. Some of the other, like childcare, partially federally funded. So, there would have to be sort of language that indicated something if there was that federal eligibility would supersede a state, which happens anyway. That's,
Okay,
yeah, so,
thank you.
yeah. Any other questions for Representative Page? Thank you so much, Woody, for being here and have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye, Woody.
Let's hope, we're not shoveling snow this week.
I know.
Some are going to-
It's a distinct possibility, I think, although it looks nice and sunny out there right now.
I looked at a recent update.
Okay, so we don't have Representative Minier here yet. So we have an opportunity for Representative McGuire to take
My
the
turn.
witness seat.
Still saying 8 to 10 inches.
Yeah,
Oh,
Tomorrow?
tomorrow?
yeah, overnight,
Oh, I was gonna take my brother out of the mess.
early in the day.
He's gonna be so
Yeah.
sad.
Welcome to the witness chair.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be back in this seat.
I know, I was gonna say, you were there last year.
And I was on a couple of occasions.
It's the lower seat.
Yeah, I know. It's, yeah.
Don't worry about the.
For the record, Representative Eric McGuire. First, I want to start by expressing my gratitude and appreciation for allowing me to even introduce these. Thank you. So why don't I start with H 293, which is an act relating to health equity data reporting and registry disclosure requirements. Really, the justification behind this bill, the health equity legislative report, the proposed policy decreases the frequency of the required health equity data analysis report from 1 year to every 3 years to the legislation. Changes in health outcomes reflected in data analysis takes time. Change in the report requirements to a less frequent allows the department to show and report on actual change rather than the process that may lead to the change. The department already presents much of this information. This is the Agency of Human Services. The department already presents much of this information in several other health equity data analysis and health disparity reports regularly published by the department. This policy proposes leveraging department resources more efficiently by decreasing the required frequency on the legislative report, thereby allowing the department to focus its resources on detecting and addressing health equity disparities. While health outcomes may not change in 3 years, it is more likely the department will be able to identify and report on changes to health outcomes in 3 years as compared to in 1 year increments. And there is support from the Health Equity Advisory Commission or the Office of Racial Equity for this. And some of the sections, disclosure requirements, updates for the cancer and ALS registries. The proposed policy allows the commissioner the discretion to accept agreements and assurance from health researchers, state registries, or federal agencies to keep cancer registry information confidential and private rather than requiring written signed agreements. The commissioner maintains the authority to enter into these agreements. The proposed policy responds to a change in federal law that resulted in public health surveillance research unable to get the approvals needed to obtain confidential information from the cancer and ALS registries. If no legislative action is taken, Vermont is still required the CDC's National Breast and Cervical Cancer Early Detection Program to provide a signed written agreement to keep the cancer registry information confidential and privileged prior to disclosing cancer registry information to the CDC. This may impact the state's relationship with the CDC. I don't know what those impacts would look like. And similarly, there's a new word for everybody. If no legislative action is taken, researchers who are unable to obtain our IRB approval because their research is not human subject research, their research is related to public health surveillance, will not be able to obtain cancer and ALS registry information. So basically, this is just a housekeeping bill that allows the department, instead of providing a report every 1 year to come back every 3 years. That's pretty much the context of the entire bill. What that report looks like would be up to the discretion of the department. But I think this is a good opportunity because I go in and look at the things that allows them to stay focused on other matters. And there's a lot of data and a lot of research that's out there that does show you got more effective results and really where things are going after 3 years than you do after 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I understand that concept of some things don't change dramatically in 1 year, but you can see the difference over a bill.
Over an extended, and
Yeah.
usually it's right around that 3 year mark, and then things, you see greater results after that 7 year mark.
So can I ask a question, two questions? One, is this something that the health department has requested?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then two, and you might not have the answer to this, that I don't understand the exact nuances of the differences between the research academic requirements, the change. I don't really understand what the differences are. But that, I know it looks like, I know I'm sort of familiar with the one about the protection of human subjects. Not as familiar with the second one, but if we take this up, that's something we can ask the health.
Yeah, that's information that can be explored. And again, research strategies, models, outcome measurements are changing exponentially on a daily, weekly basis. So they are always constantly fluidly changing.
Okay. And, yeah, other questions? Go ahead.
We're not
Rafael.
starting until 2028.
Yeah.
Why not? If
That's a great question, which I will get the answer to.
Because if you don't need it annually, why wait 3 years to?
Maybe it's the timing that
The timing of-
report issued this year, and then 3 years from this year is 2028.
Would be-
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. You want to read the rest?
Anybody else have a question? All right, great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Next.
And yes, H39, repealing the Safe and Overdose Prevention Center, repealing the bill completely. I think many within this body know my rationale and reasoning, whether I agree or disagree at this time. It is not part of the harm reduction model of SAMHSA, the National Health Institute, or our American Society of Addiction Medicine, which is the gold standard that is provided to practitioners in regards to approaches to take for harm reduction and reducing the opioid issues. That's really where I'm going with the repeal of this. The second is I have expressed many, many concerns. We don't know where at this time the Department of Justice, the federal administration does stand on these initiatives. They have not granted down their responses from the Department of Justice, whether or not they are going to enforce the Controlled Substance Act, which these centers are in violation of, if enforced. So there's a lot of concerns that I have, and especially when we recognize that we are trying to make strong quality investments into our infrastructure of continuum care of substance abuse and mental health. And as we are allocating these funds off to this endeavor, it is having a diverse effect of what we can allocate off to the proven strategies that are working. I understand that we have an obligation and a commitment and a responsibility, and I think I was very outspoken on the floor in H218 of that commitment that we have to maintain to fund it. It is in law, and it is the responsibility of this body to continue to have that funded through the abatement fund, as long as that abatement fund lasts. And I believe it's important that we continue to obligate that commitment. Again, whether we agree or disagree, that's the fact of the matter. That's the truth. That's the end of that discussion. But I believe going forward, this is going to be something we are going to have to look at in the near future. Because again, I believe my concerns are warranted. I do believe there are going to be things that are going to be presented in the next year or so in regards to what's going on in the sites in New York as well as the one in Providence. And it's kind of just taken we may need to just look at this now before we put agencies or the workers in the field into rather harmful positions that may result in unintended consequences. So I felt it was practical and appropriate to at least submit this for repeal, and we can choose as a body where we would like to go further with it. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present it.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions for Eric?
Trying to, if I may understand, your recognition here and on the floor about S218 and the process there and the funding that's already in the pipeline.
Yep.
This has an effective date. So I just want to make sure I understand. So as long as 218 is in effect, you understand and support that that's what the legislature is doing. You would like us to stop that funding through this.
No, I'd like for us to repeal the entire, what would be considered Act 178 of last year. We repeal this bill is to repeal. Going forward is repealing Act 178 and shutting down any more initiatives towards overdose prevention centers.
And if it made it through the process and passed, then those funds that we approved 218 would not be.
They wouldn't be allocated because
allocated.
the pilot and initiative no longer exists.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Eric? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Jubilee's online, so just, if I happen to miss a hand or something, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so now we're, should be seeing Representative Meunier in a second or two. Anybody have any questions about the week or next week coming up? We're going to be, I'll just take the opportunity now to do it, because then when we're done with the other two bill introductions, we're done. We have H91 coming up to the floor on Tuesday. Representative McGill is doing the primary reporting with backup from me, Representative McGuire, and Representative Donahue. We just passed the budget, so that now moves to the Senate. They will actually do some pretty quick work on that. Hey, come on in. We'll see a conference committee appointed probably, I would say, by the 1st of May or so. So just so you know, for people who haven't been through that process before. The other thing that I want to let people know is that we understand, although I don't believe it's happened yet, that the governor will issue an executive order for families with children and people who meet the governor's definition of health risk, which is essentially people who need assistance of a wheelchair or walking device, or people who need electricity, like for oxygen. He's going to, as we understand it, and this may change, I don't know, things change, but I just wanted to update people because April 1st is around the corner. He's expected to issue an executive order enabling those people to stay in motels through June 30th. And as you probably read in the paper, the two family shelters will remain open, not all the way, in Williston, that one will remain open, and it will be taken over by CVOEO in Burlington at some time in the not too distant future. And the one in Waterbury will shut down the middle of June. But they do want to retain that and are working on an agreement with the town of Waterbury to reopen that as a family shelter, hopefully with a local provider during the colder weather. So that's what's happening on that front. Just trying to think of other things that we have going. Next week, we're gonna take up the Senate bill that was, came over for us, S-36. We're going to start to take testimony on S-36. Deals with, substance use and mental health. And we will need to finish work on that in sufficient time for the Healthcare Committee to take a look at it. We are also have witnesses coming in with regard to H-92. Thank you, Lori, for putting those in the middle, so I don't have to search up there to see which one it is. On H-92, with the Human Services Board, we're going to be having folks who are the key departments, essentially the legal counsel for the key departments, because they are the ones who usually are presenting at the Human Services Board. We'll have the chair of the Human Services Board in, and also, looking to have people who have been impacted by Human Services Board. So that's right now, that's what's up for next week. So welcome, Representative Meunier. Happy to have you here.
Hey, can I come up?
Yeah. Join us.
Thank you, thank you.
Is this your first time up here?
I mean, for real, yeah.
Yeah.
There's snacks and, I haven't been up since Noah was here.
So, welcome
Thank you.
to the Human Services Committee, and we're happy to have you here talking about your bill, H-144.
That is the one. Brian Minier, South Burlington, Chittenden 11. Thank you for having me here. For a little bit of background, this is not this bill's first time around. My predecessor, John Kalaki, actually introduced it a couple of years ago. I introduced it last biennium. And here we are again, so I'm delighted to have it off the wall to talk about it. The other thing to say is that it's a constituent bill, not in the sense like, don't pay attention, I'm just doing this for them, but in the sense that there's a little kid in my community to whom this is very important, and to his mother too. And I don't know if you had a chance to read through, but in some of the preamble, I think it's about 10% of Americans have one of these allergies severe enough to send them to the hospital should something go south. And this cute little kid had a couple of those before they figured out what they were doing, the family.
And I think we have heard from your constituent.
I didn't set her loose.
I think we have, or at least I have. I don't know.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a go-getter.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess I should say there too, should you decide to go further with this, obviously there's an amped up local crowd that can do live testimony if you like. And the constituent, is also in touch with a national level advocate with whom I've spoken, who can tell you how this has been done in New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, materials if you want to see them, et cetera, and they'd be happy to
Great.
come up.
Thank you.
So the basic idea is you're going to have somebody front of house and back of house who knows about food allergens, knows how to talk about them, knows how to make a family with this issue feel comfortable. I guess I want to start with some of the things that people might object to, which is it expensive? The answer is no. This is an online video training. My last information is probably a year or two stale now, but it was as little as $10 and as much as 25 or 30, I think, to do it. If you're a small establishment, we don't want it to be a big onus either. So maybe you've just got one person who does both front and back of house. That's fine, as long as the person talking to the customers and knows about the preparation of the food. We would see this working through the Department of Health as part of just an annual health inspection kind of thing. So the apparatus is already there. And it wouldn't prove to be any extra onus on the health group. So I want to see, do I miss anything else? Anyway, so easy video training. Don't even have to happen every year. You could do it every 2 or 3. Rolled out through the Department of Health. Cheap, easy. And we see it as a win-win because you would then unlock these 10% of people who are too afraid to go to your establishment. And the ones that are already doing it, right, some are choosing to. They trust these places, they will go to them. And so should other places follow suit, we think the same would happen.
So, I'm trying to figure out, I reading through the, so, identifying and having somebody who's been trained in allergic reactions, seems to would be helpful for a food establishment to have on hand, like, training in how to do CPR, it's a life-saving thing.
Sure.
I don't see anything here that requires them to list potential allergens in their food.
I believe that was part of it, but I would have to look through it
Is
again.
that okay?
Yeah.
I could be just missing it because I just did a quick scan through. What is it? Where is it?
Page 4, line 15, list of major food allergens.
Yeah.
But then don't have the list of what they are, but are required to have a list.
Well, it's a list of major food allergens, but it's not saying that it's in their food.
They would then have on the menu saying this one, you could have little symbols like some places, is it
Like-
gluten-free, is there a peanut, is there dairy?
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's what it's is it intended, I guess it should ask, that their menu or their signage would be about not just generically what, what are major food allergens, but what are major food allergens in the food that
That
they
actual dish or
produce.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I see that as desirable, but you can put the entire onus on the customer and just say, whatever you're trying to order, ask about it. And you better then as the establishment have somebody who can talk about it and somebody who knows how to prepare it. So you can put the onus wherever you like. And we're citing, we don't want this to be punitive either, right?
Of course,
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Just trying to give people information about things and yeah. Anybody have any other questions for Representative Minier? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I understand the desire for it not to be punitive. Just thinking through in my head, the nature of restaurant is often there's a lot of turnover on staff.
Yeah.
So a restaurant being in compliance, out of compliance, in compliance, out of compliance, as you get the turnover of staff. And I'll acknowledge not having only,
So you guys are busy and I saw it's every 10 minutes, so.
I've just read,
Yeah.
read quickly, have
Yeah.
not read in detail, but is there any provision in there, but that we wouldn't have a restaurant, fail a health, or
Yes.
any recognition of that type of turnover in that industry?
Well, and one of the things that you can do is somebody who's high enough up, you're probably going to keep them for a while. They can do the training and then push it out to other people. So that's envisioned too. But again, yeah, any of the details can be tweaked.
I kind of view it similarly as, people serving alcohol have to take the Department of Liquor and Lotteries alcohol server
Sure. Yeah.
certification thing online and.
I want to just say food storage, like don't leave the mayo out. I mean, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Representative
figured
White.
something like this would be part of, is to go to your point, like part of Safe Serve. That they would give this training part of Safe Serve.
Yeah, I don't know what that is specifically, but if it's wrapped into like a hygiene inspection kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're envisioning.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. I hope you get to enjoy the beautiful afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Good luck, Brian.
It's just the Bryans. The Bryans. Hello, Representative Tina.
I'm just reacting in real time to the governor's decisions here.
Yes, we just,
Hearing about the nonsense going on.
so, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. We are looking at H 456 regarding, state funded and community-based
It'd be good if
services.
it was up on.
Here.
Well, I want the public to be able to see it.
Okay, I was gonna say you can use.
Okay, well, our witnesses generally do that, but
Oh,
can
okay.
I ask Lori if you will do that?
You can ask.
I can go get my computer too, but
That's all right. Hold on just a second. It'll take a second. For committee members, it's on our webpage. Just a little bit bigger. Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
realizing there's this strange Champlain Valley, Upper Valley thing going on with this bill.
So what can, give us an overview
Yeah.
and what it is you're trying to do with the bill.
So basically, if we could scroll down. The idea here was that we have, that after World War II, there was a policy of deinstitutionalization that went into place in the United States, and people were moved out of institutions run by the state for people with developmental, intellectual disabilities, mental health conditions, I would even say substance use disorders, because at the time alcoholism, wasn't called a substance use disorder, but people who were struggling with alcoholism were in institutions at times. The state, not just the state, but our society, various, federal and state and local government closed institutions but failed to invest in the systems of community care needed to maintain people with special needs in the community. And so what this bill does is speak about establishing a state-funded and community-based continuum of care for justice-involved individuals, for those whose actions have caused involvement in the criminal justice system. And I would like to say that a lot of times these actions are survival behaviors, that people stealing food, tampons from the CVS, people breaking and entering into an abandoned building to sleep, to have a warm place to sleep, or breaking into a car because they're so desperate and cold. That if we look at a lot of people who are facing incarceration, that there's a significant portion of them who are people who are there because of behaviors related to survival, because they have special needs that aren't met. And this committee knows full well, I don't need to go on about the demographics of like our current unhoused and incarcerated population and the level of people with disabilities who are incarcerated or unhoused. And these are all people who the state would have been taking care of. Granted, warehousing people in a prison or in an asylum or even in motels is not good policy, but throwing people out on the street isn't either. So the idea here is, how do we move to something in between that? How do we invest in community-based services and housing programs for people so that we can keep them out of our prisons, which are really expensive, and out of our emergency rooms? I was just talking with someone about how everyone here may not know this, but 3 nights a week with the People's Kitchen, a volunteer group, we feed people outside in Burlington. There were 67 people Tuesday night who came and ate with us. Half of them were on their way to the emergency room because their feet are starting to rupture and ulcer from gangrene, from frostbite. Many of them do inject drugs, which complicates matters. Every night they go in the emergency room, that costs the system of care thousands of dollars. And every time they break into some abandoned building and get arrested and end up incarcerated for a night, it costs hundreds of dollars. It's racking up a massive expense for the taxpayers to have this current model. And so here's some examples of what we could do instead. And so if we could quickly look at a few, I don't need to do like a full walkthrough if you don't want.
Okay, we can scroll through them.
I won't read all the findings. I can let council do that another time if you wish.
Okay, so.
Yeah, but maybe this part though, like I will say the intent and purpose. Reducing harm, restoring justice, promoting recovery and building resilience by delaying construction of new correctional facilities and instead prioritizing in investments in social and housing infrastructure to promote transformative justice and recovery by providing housing and shelter for justice-involved individuals alongside the community-based community-based services, my bad. I skipped to the next word. So we can go down. I just wanted you to see a few examples of what this looks like.
Okay.
Your committee is doing some of this already. I want to acknowledge that. When I saw the opioid settlement bill, I said, oh, this is great. Some of this stuff seems to intersect with that. So if you could just go down to where the actual appropriations are here. Here's an example. So giving grants to Pathways Vermont. I mean, I'm assuming you are doing that. I saw in the opioid settlement fund a few mentions of Pathways. So some of this you may already be doing. This next one, the Land Access and Opportunity Board. And this one, I don't think the Land Access and Opportunity Board has been given base funding, which is great. But this is actually money for grants specifically for the purchase of real property for the creation of supportive and transitional housing. And the idea is to prioritize people who are justice involved and experiencing homelessness and who are part of historically marginalized groups. If you can go down a little further, if you just want to see this, you can go up just like one line. That prioritizing the use of the housing first model and peer-based services. So I'm hopeful you've heard about these services And I know the seasoned members have, but I hope you all have heard at this point. And we'll whether this bill action is taken on it, I mean, next year, because you can't this year, that you consider these ideas in your work. Or maybe there's things like that are going back and forth with the Senate that you say, you know, we could adjust this a little bit in this direction. That would be appreciated.
I think when you take a look at H91, you'll see some of these words and intents in H91 as well, in terms of peer-based services, housing first principles. Those you'll see them encapsulated, and we also there's a specific language with regard to people transitioning from corrections. I don't know, I can't remember the exact language we used, but I want to acknowledge what I realize that you're trying to do is to prevent that from happening and to look at that in advance of those kinds of things, which is one of the real, I'm trying to do a sell job in H91 now, but one of the real benefits of that is the flexibility that's enabled at the community level to invest in preventative work that doesn't currently happen as much as we'd like to see it happen in the way the construct is at the state level now. So
I look forward to reading it.
Yeah.
And I will. So you see here, there's a part around residential recovery facilities that I think the state should look more at. If we have one secure residential recovery residence right now for mental health, people will be placed there on an ON. Well, I don't know if it's an ONH because I guess it is an ONH because it's not a hospital.
order of non-hospitalization.
Yeah.
People who
And
don't,
I was thinking Ann Donahue would know.
Anne would know, but I'm not sure other people would.
Like that people at the secure recovery residential residence, they're on an ONH.
They're on an order of non-hospitalization, right? That's specially approved for purposes of that facility as opposed to actually being in the community.
Right. So there's one of these facilities in the state for mental health. Why not explore ones for people with substance use disorder when they get in trouble so many times that they're going to be incarcerated, that it's almost like an order of non-incarceration or something where they sign it and they're staying in a secure residential facility and accepting the treatment, not involuntary. They're saying, I'm choosing to commit myself for a year to this facility, versus being in jail for 6 months and then on the street again.
Yeah.
Because my lawyer gets me out, or something, which happens.
I'm curious about how the administration has a proposal to transition the St. Johnsbury work camp or whatever you want to call it to a sort of in-house substance treatment, correctional facility, but that's for people who've already been committed. But I really appreciate the concept that you're talking about. It's like a diversion.
Yes. Exactly.
The concept of diversion, or what's the other one where we have community justice centers?
Restorative program.
Restorative justice, it's like that sort of concept, or even, in the way back times, the crash program for people.
My God.
I remember that. Remember the old.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
They still have that, only it's not called that anymore, but those are things that people were able to enter or complete rather than going to correctional facility. And I think, given that we know that 2/3 of the individuals in correctional custody right now have substance use disorder, I think that that's a really important thing for us to be thinking about.
I appreciate that. So that's what I would just ask is the committee, for what it's worth, I appreciate what you're doing. When I spoke about the opioid settlement fund bill openly, I probably will comment on H91 since but I may not. But I appreciate the direction you're going in. So I would just ask, keep thinking about these ideas. Maybe we could just scroll, because we don't have to give every detail, but I want you to see just the examples.
Yeah.
So this one is about recovery centers. You know what they are, so I don't need to explain it. So it's just about investing more in those. So I don't want to spend more time on it.
Mhm.
Down here, this one's about community justice centers, which you were just talking about, restorative justice. And if we go a little further, this one here is about the designated agencies being funded better to do the work they do, which you hear about. So you can go down a little further. Pilot program. Okay, this one is a little, this is one where I want to just take a minute because it's something I don't think we're doing yet. The other things we're doing and we just kind of talked about. This would be expanding substance use and mental health outpatient services in correctional facilities using community-based providers who can do telehealth or go to the facilities and paying them out of money in a pilot fund until the Medicaid kicks in.
Mhm.
Because right now, my understanding is we can start people on the Medicaid. This happened, I think, last session, right? And Representative McGuire would know because he was on the corrections. Others here may know exactly how it works. But my understanding is you can apply for the Medicaid before, I don't think it's called discharge, exiting. What's it called when you leave jail? Not discharge. Release. Thank you. It's released. Release, discharge. I mean, gross. But you know, but I'm just thinking about like how sick I did. Sorry.
And then, well, I actually hate the new lingo.
Yeah, it's
You're not
gross.
discharged, you discharge, including from the hospital now. You're not discharged from the hospital, you discharge.
Choose to discharge.
Well, you discharge, and it's the same with, but also the newest one in the bill downstairs is you then, after you discharge, you are then eligible to recidivate.
Oh my
That's
God.
real language in a bill.
Is it?
Yes.
So I kind of digressed here a little because, and I just the language is weird sometimes. I
Yeah.
don't talk this way in real life, and then I come here and I try to describe things, and I'm like, what up, you know, it's just like
Mhm.
speaking another language sometimes, and it's awkward. But what I was getting at is before a person completes their time completes their incarceration or is released from their incarceration, that they can start on Medicaid. And we can technically, I haven't heard of this happening yet. Technically, people could start doing telehealth with them in the facility and billing Medicaid. Like my clients who are currently incarcerated, who I can't see because there's no way, even if I want to see them free right now, there's no infrastructure for that. But when they started Medicaid, if there was infrastructure in place, I could get paid to see them using telehealth. And then when they came out, the first day they came out, they could come to my office and continue therapy. And that doesn't happen right now. If we're lucky, sometimes the timing works and someone gets out of incarceration and they're set up with a provider. But a lot of times people get out and they're just like floating out there. So what this would do is never have there be a gap. The idea is that when a person's insurance ends, when they're incarcerated, that if they wanted to continue therapy with their existing provider or find a therapist, there'd be a fund of money. There'd be funding for the case management, for the infrastructure and facilities for this. They could continue therapy using telehealth with their community-based provider. And then just when they're released, continue with that person. So it creates continuity of care for people during incarceration, which I think research would show that maintaining that therapeutic relationship, if it's working, and while they're incarcerated and when they come out would reduce recidivism and would improve health outcomes because there would not be a disruption of care. And I can say, working with people who have been incarcerated, that things change for them when they're incarcerated, and sometimes they find me after and sometimes they can't or whatever. But if they had the support through the incarceration, I think it would be a more productive intervention, even though that's not the intent of incarceration, it's punishment. But incarceration could be more of an intervention, is what I'm saying. I saw a hand.
That represents Cole.
Yeah, I mean, one important piece to consider here too is that unfortunately the Medicaid piece only applies 90 days prior to release, and that's brand new too. So this is, I don't know. So it would be, it is important for the pre-transition time and to have somewhat, some continuity there. But it's not enough, it's very small too. So I also am excited about conversations kind of not differentiating healthcare between our incarcerated folks and everyone else and having the same access to healthcare because, that's why is that another punishment for the crime instead of whatever punishment we sanction as a state to lose healthcare. So, or at least the version that we have today in our private prisons.
And I know that Eric has worked on this in the past, or maybe even this year, I'm trying to remember, isn't there a bill floating around here about the intent, it would be
To align the
align,
Medicaid assistance
yes,
program that goes on inside the facility to be replicated as the same as it would be.
to essentially utilize the community-based providers as opposed to doing it they're replicating it inside the facility as opposed to using the community-based providers, which I won't say for sure, but I would bet would be less costly than, and we pay for that all with state funds right now.
Yeah.
It can be at the 90-day mark, transition to that, but
You will get my point here.
Yeah.
I think that was the main thing it sounds like people get it. It's about filling this gap with money to see how it goes. And then knowing that Medicaid's not going to cover it, private insurance not going to cover it. And it sounds like this, you're talking about the hub and spoke, maybe be like reaching into these facilities. And that's really what I'm getting at is how do we provide equity for people and support the existing providers instead of, with all due respect, giving 30 million or whatever it is a year to an out-of-state company to then contract with local providers to go in and provide this separate system of care. That 30 million could probably be better invested when that if we explore now how to use that money differently in small pieces, when the contract expires, we can just solidify those investments. And I'm guessing that 30 million could help people outside more than inside. If you think about that, if we just shore up our system of care. Oh, I thought I kicked someone, but it was a bag.
Not to mention too, that company we are continuing to use went bankrupt themselves and we're still.
Wait, they
continuing to use them.
did now? Oh my God, they
Yeah.
keep going bankrupt.
Yeah, and we continue, it's just not working.
I have to say, the Joint Justice Oversight Committee did look at that last summer, and looked at what would it cost to essentially discontinue the contract with the current vendor and to utilize, I don't know how it was phrased, but essentially state employees and state, it was a lot more than the $30 million.
It was.
Line, yeah.
It'd be cool if there's a report. I would try to check it out.
It is. Look on last
I will.
summer's Joint Justice Oversight. So, okay, is there other things in
Let's see,
here?
I think there might be one more component, but let's just quickly, because if you, Ledge Council could always read through this with you if you want to explore these things in greater detail. I don't want to take time on all these. This is all the technicalities of that. Oh, here we go. Now, this is part your committee may not have jurisdiction over. I'm happy the bill got sent here because I do think that this should be treated as a human services matter, but this part basically says we're not going to build a new prison until we consider these things for a few years, because if these things work, we may not need to build a new prison. We can move people out of our prisons into housing and into other kinds of facilities, and then then bring people home from out of state, which would save us like what, 40-something million there, and then so that the idea is like by delaying, it doesn't mean we cannot renovate existing facilities. So that's what this doesn't say. It just says we're not going to build we would not build, it would be a moratorium for 4 years or something to explore these ideas. So this part, it's not really your committee's,
Jurisdiction, right?
that's the word, yeah.
Yep.
But so we can keep going. I think this might be the end of the bill anyway. The main thing I wanted to talk about with you all today, here's the part that I did want to say this. That it would be that joint legislative justice oversight would be monitoring these reinvestments and looking at cost savings. So the idea is that, whether we have a moratorium or not, I do think there would be a benefit to, as your committee's investing in all these different projects that are in the opioid bill and maybe H91 and in the budget, that if we are monitoring these things very carefully, looking at cost savings, and then in our future budgets, looking at moving money into what's saving money and helping people better, and really reinvesting away from, and I don't mean like defunding police, like something like that, but it's not about defunding, it's about reinvesting. It's like, it's not about having the women in the women's facilities suffer more. It's about investing in alternatives so we can move them out of there into it. That's kind of what I wanted to get at here with the cost savings. So it's not about, yes, it is about defunding incarceration, but I'd rather think of it as reinvesting. It's like justice reinvestment 2.0 or whatever. It's like the next generation Justin Reed, I like that better. It's like Star Trek-y.
3.0.
Okay, so it's like-
It's like 2.0.
It's like Voyager, you know, Justice Reinvestment Voyager.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting lost in the Delta Quadrant. Sorry, Star Trek reference, but is there? I don't think there's
I
anything
think
else.
that's it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
rest is,
Yeah. So I mean, the main thing here in summary is just that I would like you to consider the pieces here that you aren't already considering,
Mhm.
because some of it you are. So then you have that.
Thank you, Representative Tina.
Thanks.
Questions for Representative Tina? And we've sort of had a discussion, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
you.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
thoughtful consideration of this on an ongoing basis. You know, I feel like this is something that you're very passionate about and appreciate that, Pat.
Thanks. I feel like it's paying off because we are kind of going in these directions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Me too.
Yeah.
What's next? Should I go?
Uh,
voting your bill out today.
Actually, we're wrapping up for the week.
Go back to my committee. then.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. Representative Chino always makes me smile. He's a character.
Question, Madam Chair. Earlier, we received the email and to help us prioritize. I do see at the end of that list, S36.
Yeah, you don't waste a vote on S36 because we will be taking up S36.
Which one is it?
That's the one from the Senate on,
Oh, yeah, right.
I didn't see it, so I already sent mine in, so I guess that's good.
yeah, so you don't need
It
to,
didn't go all the way down.
you don't need to put a vote on that because we will be voting on that one already. Okay. And so just, thank you for that reminder. Lori sent that out a little while ago. If you can make sure to send that back, by Tuesday, that would be great. Thank you for doing that, Lori. That was really easy to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, just say one thing, it might ask you to log in to Microsoft 365. It's just your regular.
Your regular Ledge
It
account.
worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tested it and it opened right up. I didn't fill it
Yeah,
out
I
yet,
didn't have
but-
any problem either.
I didn't know, so I asked Lori.
All right, any other questions from anybody? All right, well, have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine while it's still here, and the snow.
Steve,